Hello and welcome to Creeping It Real, the show where we watch scary things so you don't have to. I'm Michelle, and this time I'm joined by Lou.
Hello.
And we watched the 2021 sequel movie, Don't Breathe 2. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the way we do this segment, we are going to spoil absolutely everything about this movie, break it down for you, let you know kind of what's going on with it, and if we think anyone should ever watch the movie. So full spoilers. We're starting right away with the spoilers. So this movie picks up 8 years after the previous movie, following the main character and or villain from the first movie, known as the Blind Man. In this case, we actually do find out his name is Norman. So following Norman, who now has a young child in his possession, and it follows kind of what happens with these characters. So the movie opens up with his daughter, because the girl calls him father, his daughter Phoenix, and him living in a house, and he won't let her go anywhere. She does kind of go out at one point to go to the site of the death of her mother, because he tells her that her mother died in a fire. So she goes out to leave flowers by her mother's burnt up house, where we see a shadowy figure in the background kind of watching her. She then goes into town with a friend that they have, where this like creepy gang tries to abduct her, but then she does not get abducted. So she goes back home, and that's where the gang finds her and tries to abduct her from the house. So the first kind of chunk of the movie, we're trying to break it down into 3 parts. It's really a 2-part movie. So the gang's there trying to abduct her from the house, and Norman is trying to fight them off. So for this chunk of the movie, Lou, what'd you think? What'd you think about it?
You know what? This is actually the part of the movie where it still had my attention. I mean, we've mentioned it a bunch of times that this movie didn't need a sequel, but they did. So whatever. There's a new child. He is now the protagonist of this movie. It's sort of similar in a way where people are going into the house and stuff. I do like him as a villain better, but it was fun to see him kind of beat people up as the blind man. So in this chunk of the movie, I liked.
Yeah, I mean, this movie again didn't need a sequel. He's the villain of the first movie, and he's a despicable villain. Like a gross, terrible villain. For those who haven't watched the first movie, I'm just gonna say this. He has like a thing where he has kidnapped a woman, has her tied up in the basement, and he's trying to inseminate her with a turkey baster.
Turkey baster forever.
It's disgusting. It's nasty. It's not a good character. Like, this guy's crazy and scary and weird. So I went to see the movie. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see how they were trying to make a sequel out of a movie with the worst character from that movie, like the villain. And it didn't work for me in any capacity, because I can't get that out of my head that he's like, at this point, we don't know where this little girl came from. So I'm like, is she the child of that victim? Like, you say you found her from a burnt house. I don't trust that that's true. Did you steal her? I feel really uncomfortable with this kid existing. I'm like, is this really your kid? Did you rape somebody? Like, what? Why is this kid here that you're so protective of? Because we know from the first movie that his daughter was killed by a drunk driver. Yeah. So he has this complex of trying to replace his daughter by just like stealing people and impregnating them to create a new child. So I assumed this was his like weird rape baby. So that was just uncomfy. It's uncomfy. I get that he's trying to protect her. To me, this first half of the movie was everything that was good about the other movie, but I'm rooting for the wrong character at this point, because
and we shouldn't really be cheering for him.
Yeah, I'm cheering for the child to be safe, because innocent child in this scenario, of course. But I'm like, I kind of want him to get killed by the invaders, but also I don't want the invaders to steal this child, because at this point I'm like, is this human trafficking? Because they had been playing up that there was a human trafficker like on the loose in the area. So I'm like, are they going to traffic this child? Because I'm not on board for that. The first movie was so good at being this reversal on a home invasion movie where they invade the house and it turns out the dude in the house is more dangerous. And I liked that. And that happens again here, but this time Norman's fighting adults, not teenagers, idiot teenagers. He's fighting adults. So in this case, he loses the fight, and the child gets taken from him. And then I don't love it. I didn't love any of that. I don't love this movie. And then kind of moving into the second half of this movie, because truly it's a 2-part movie. The second part is where we get kind of the reveal of why, who this little child is and why these people are coming to get her. It turns out that the main like ringleader of this gang is her biological father, and that he had been in jail for 8 years because he and the mother are we're making meth and we're just drug dealers and drug addicts and not the best people to be around. And there was a legitimate fire in the house, but her mother didn't die. Her mother just got very burnt up and terminally ill from all the drugs she was doing, and then also the house fire. So it turns out Norman found this girl just in the wreckage of this house and stole her and just made her think that he was her father. So again, this character we're supposed to be rooting for is straight up a villain. And yes, he took her from a bad situation, but like, you also stole the child.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're thinking, oh, the family's come back to save this child from this man who stole her. That's okay. We're on board. Like, that's motivation. Turns out they're trying to steal her because the mother needs an organ transplant and the daughter's the only match. So they're actually stealing her to harvest her organs while she's awake, because they're doing it in this sketchy hotel and they don't have the proper equipment to perform this surgical procedure without with putting her unconscious. So she's gonna be conscious while they take, I think it's her heart.
Yeah, she had to be conscious while they operate to keep the hearts, whatever science they say.
Yeah, some science to make them even more deplorable of a character. So now we're rooting for the rapist child abductor as opposed to the drug addict, organ trafficking parents. So Norman, being the very smart man he is, he actually befriends the dog of the ringleader, the father character, and follows the dog to this hideout so he's able to attack the hideout. He knocks out the light so everyone's on even playing field and they're all blind in the dark, even though he's in an area he's literally never been before. And I'm pretty sure he still would be at a disadvantage because he doesn't even know what the place looks like, whereas at least they would know what the place looks like. But he's that brilliant and that amazing of a character that he doesn't even need the floor plan.
We have Matt Murdock over here.
Yeah, so he's like daredeviling it up. He's fighting all these guys, and they have this really big altercation by an empty pool in which the mother character actually ends up getting accidentally shot and falling into the pool and dragging the daughter with her. And then we see Norman and the dad fight, and Norman blinds the dad. So now he too is a blind man. At this point, Norman gets fatally wounded, and the daughter Tara / Phoenix, because he named her Phoenix, but her real name's Tara, goes to Norman, is like, I'll save you, I'll help you, let me save you. And then he says, you already saved me. And then he succumbs to his wounds until the post-credit scene in which he's still alive.
Of course he is.
Ta-da! So what do you think of the second half of this movie?
Okay, so this is where it just goes off the rails and you don't know which villain you're cheering for. So what I did was, as much as I could, just enjoy the violence as much as I can, because it is the only thing that I could get from this movie, because story-wise, nothing makes sense anymore. Like, what kind of parents would, look for their kids after a while? Oh, I just need your heart, but, I want you to be alive because some science explains that you need to be conscious while we take your heart out. It was really dumb. Even although some of the murder scenes were cool, so that's the only thing I could cheer for. What else do I feel about this? Yeah, again, I'm gonna go back to, this didn't need a sequel. The first one was just really awesome, and after the ending, you were just like, wow, that was cool. And that's that. I don't need anything else. So yeah, how do you feel about it, Michelle?
They tried, like the writers tried so hard to make us cheer for this guy. Like they really, they thought, okay, so we have, on one hand, we have blind man Norman, who is a rapist, child abductor. Like that is what he is, and he calls himself that in the movie. So we have that character. Who are we going to dream up that's worse than that, so we make the audience root for this guy? Like that's what it is. It's just this like study of the worst possible situations you could ever think of, so you have to root for him. And not just the first movie, you don't root for him. He is the villain. Even though the characters that are originally breaking into his house are bad people, you still root for them. They still have this little bit of backstory. They're little like, you know, their motivations make sense. Like the one girl's trying to steal money to save her sister from their abusive family, and great. The actions are bad, but the motivations are good. All this is bad. It's all bad. It's on par bad. I don't, as a viewer, want to cheer for anybody. At this point, honestly, I hope the kid dies, because it's a better life than either of these two options that she has. Like that's where I'm at. I'm like, I hope when she fell in the pool, you get this moment where you think she might actually be dead. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, she's safer there. Like she's literally safer being dead. Like that was my thought process, because it was so bad. Then she, you know, she leaves Norman to die, and she goes and checks herself into a group home or whatever. And I'm like, okay, she's okay. She's the only character I remotely care about. But even so, she's not even a real fleshed out child character.
No, not even.
So it's this hollow shell of a character that maybe you're supposed to like her, maybe you're supposed to like him. I'm at this point as a viewer disappointed and confused, because Don't Breathe the First is amazing. It is so creative. It is such a good movie, and it didn't need a freaking sequel. And in this case, unfortunately, the sequel took away from the first movie for me. I'm going to actually have a hard time going back and enjoying the first movie for what it is, knowing that this steaming pile of garbage came afterwards. So did not, I barely sat through it. Also, I think it's worth noting, this movie is dark, and not just tonally dark. Visually, it's dark as heck.
It's hard to
no
see.
matter where you see it, you're like, what? What? Don't know why that was a choice, because the things that could have been good were the kills, but you can't see them very well.
There was actually one character that I genuinely liked in this movie, and it was, I don't know if there was a scene where the blind man was in the water and one guy was about to shoot him, and he's like, you know what, I can't do this. What they're doing to that little girl is not right, so I'm gonna tell you where they are. And that's the only person I liked in this movie, and he was there for 30 seconds.
The only redeemable character.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the dog. I don't know why they killed that dog.
Yeah, they had two dogs. They had his dog Shadow, and then they had like the father's dog.
Yeah.
And like, are they trying to John Wick the blind man?
Yeah.
Like they killed it, like they killed his dog at the start of the movie. So it's like, is that they stole his kid and killed his dog? So it's like blind John Wick? Because it doesn't read like that, because John Wick, to my knowledge, wasn't a child abductor rapist.
Nope.
Just throwing that out there. Yeah. So now that we have said all of those pieces, was there a favorite moment from this movie that you're like, you know what, this is the one nugget of good in the movie?
In terms of just kind of story or plot wise, nothing. But in terms of a scene, I thought it was really cool where he was in that abandoned hotel, where he was in the water and the guys were coming up, and he was sort of just feeling their footsteps through the water, like the ripple. And that is the only scene that I really liked in this movie.
Yeah. I agree. That's the only, like, in my mind, that was a memorable scene. At this point, and with the first movie, I really had to like suspend my disbelief of like, what is possible for somebody who is blind? Like, I truly don't know. So by the time this movie comes on, it's so kind of outrageous. I'm like, this is like Toph level, like Toph from Avatar, like using her earth bending to see blindness level. And I can get there. I'm on board for that. I think visually that's really cool. And the water thing to me was by far the best part. The disappointing thing was they spoiled the water scene in the trailer, because they showed that initial footstep with the ripple. They spoiled it. Because if that had come up out of nowhere, I would have been like, oh, this is so cool. But the whole time I was waiting for that scene, because I knew from the trailer that was going to be cool. So I still liked that scene, but I wish it hadn't been spoiled in the trailer, because that would have been more impressive of a scene. Because that was cool. Like, that was cool. I'll give him that. If you don't pay attention to who he is and why he's doing what he's doing in anything, that's a cool fight. That unfortunately was it. What was your least favorite moment or scene?
There was one particular scene that was just it could have been just me, but it was so dumb. Remember, it was in the first act where the blind guy glues the nose and mouth shut.
Yeah.
And then this other character, to save him, like pokes a hole in his cheek.
Yeah.
When all he could have done was open your mouth, jaw a little bit, and just cut the lip part, which he does eventually, but he could have just done that in the first place. Yeah.
That's a good one. oh man, my least favorite. It's gonna have to be the final scene, not the post credits where he's still alive. That's also bad. But when the daughter character is like, "Oh, let me save you," and he's like, "You already did."
Oh, that's number two.
How?
That was number two.
How did she say, like, what did she save you from? I don't understand. Like, I get you have this need for a child, but what? Like, they're really trying to establish this like familial bond between the two characters that just didn't make sense. It shouldn't have existed. I don't buy it. I don't understand how she saved him. Like, I truly don't. Whether he was like so depressed that his other daughter was gone, and then his other surrogate was gone, and then the girl from the first movie, like, he tried to, that did not work for me. And that, to me, just like at that, the moment he said that, I was like, forget this movie, get it out of my brain. Like, I'm like, Lou, we need to do Creeping New right now so I can remove it from my brain, because I feel viscerally angry at the existence of this film because of that scene. If that line hadn't been there, I still would have hated it, but I wouldn't have hated it with such like a fiery passion that I hate it. Like, anger, I'm angry about it. So as far as a horror movie goes, what do you think qualifies this as a horror movie, or what made it horror to you?
I think they tried a bunch of jump scares that worked 0%. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else other than fake jump scares that did nothing for me. But yeah, no, that's it, I think.
Yeah, they tried the jump scares. They had a couple jump scares in the first movie that were really effective because of how quiet the first movie was. Like, that was the whole thing. Like, it's called Don't Breathe because he can hear you breathing. You have to be so quiet. This movie was so action, it was loud. This was a loud, continuous movie. So any jump scare was already in the mess of noise. The only thing that, like, I think could make it horror was, like, it did have some bloodier kills and like grosser kills. Like, when I think about the gluing the mouth thing, that was gross. I would never like that. I was like, oh, that's disgusting and terrible, and I hate it. And it was effective. I was like, okay, that's kind of crazy. Like, that's memorable to me. But it wasn't. The scariest thing about this movie was that it was made.
Yeah, with the same director. Like,
yeah. And I'm sorry, Sam Raimi produced this, and he said, and I quote, "This is the coolest idea for a sequel ever." Sam Raimi, get your head on straight. I'm so disappointed in you. I'm so disappointed.
This better not bleed into Multiverse of Madness. I swear to God.
I'm just like, that's it. I don't trust Sam Raimi's opinion anymore, because this is the best sequel? Really? What?
It is
anything else.
It is one of the worst kind of sequels from a really, really good movie to the second movie, that there's a big difference. It's just like, what the hell? How is this even made?
Yeah, exactly. It has me questioning just everything. I'm like, if this is the bar, can I make a movie tomorrow? Because I'm pretty sure I could come up with something at least slightly, like, I mean, I'm not going to be amazing, but slightly better than this, a little bit better. So with all that, let's give it a score and say who we would recommend this movie for. A score out of 10 or 5? 5. The show is 5 for anyone watching.
I am only giving it a 1 just for, if you just like the violence in this movie. That's the only thing that gets a 1 for me. As a sequel, it fails, and it fails really bad. I would recommend this to, I wouldn't really, but if you're just curious what happens from the first one to the second one, just want to see a fall from grace, I guess. Yeah, then watch this. Otherwise, skip it. Like seriously, skip it.
I'm gonna be violent. I am personally offended by this movie. I give it a -1.
Oof.
I give it the lowest score possible. I give it
Oof.
the worst horror movie I've literally ever seen in my life score out
Wow,
of
that's a
5.
horror person right there, folks.
I've seen a lot of bad horror movies too. Like it's not like I'm watching all the classics. I will watch whatever. So I've seen some crap. And this by far takes the cake in how angry I am that it was made. This is a terrible movie. It's for nobody. Like, in my opinion, it's for literally nobody. You'd be better off reading the Wikipedia overview than spending 2 minutes in this movie. Read the Wikipedia, you're going to know everything you need to know, and you'll save yourself the time and the effort of watching this garbage. If you want to watch a bad movie, there are plenty of bad movies, but this one's bad to the point of being like, I'm offended by how bad it is. It's crap. The first movie is so good, and this is not even just like the first one's so good and this one's a little bit worse. The first one's so good and this one's just not even on the screen with how bad it is. Like it's down there. It's just on the floor. In like should have been on the cutting room floor bad. Negative score, negative all the points. Like, no, absolutely not. Don't waste your time. Please don't. And if you do, please tell me why you chose to waste your time. Because I can list at least like 20 other bad, good horror movies for you to watch.
Yeah.
There's if you want bad, they're out there and they can still be fun and still be a good time and still be a bad movie. And this is just bad, not fun, bad, just bad, just all bad.
This movie took itself way too seriously, thinking they were gonna do a decent part 2, but
they really thought they did something. They really were like, this is it. For who? For why? No, this is bad. I mean, here on Creeping It Real, we definitely watched some stinkers. My opinion, this is by far the worst movie we've ever watched for Creeping It Real, and we've watched some pretty bad ones. Some decent ones, some bad ones. So with all that being said, this has been Creeping It Real. We watched Don't Breathe 2 from 2021. As always, please leave comments, like, subscribe, do all that beautiful stuff. If you happen to have seen this movie, I would love to hear from you if you hate it as much as I did, or if you're like a little bit, I hate it, but not like into negative points like Lou did. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you watch the first one, we'd love to hear about your opinion on the first one. Maybe it wasn't as amazing as I think it is. Maybe you didn't like the first one at all, so you didn't even bother with the second. Either way, let us know. As always, I'm Michelle. I've been joined by Lou, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Or if you like Don't Breathe 2, we really want to know your reason why.
If you like it, are you okay? Like, are you okay? So you do need a hug?
That too.